She's going to be moderating former LifeLock exec and new CEO Robert Maynard. So let's give him a warm round of applause.
Yeah.
In case you wonder why I'm here this morning, it's because I actually was one of the first women entrepreneurs in Phoenix. I've got the scars to show it, and I've got the long view of what it takes to build businesses in Phoenix that aren't real estate. I'm going to name check a few people here that you probably won't remember. When I started my business, the women entrepreneurs were Hardaway Connections, that was me, Linda Brock, who was a car dealer, and Susan Brooks, who owned Cookies from Home. There were hundreds of male real estate developers. There was no technology. My PR firm was the closest thing to technology because my business had a Mac 2, a cell phone, and an answering machine. No kidding. Fast forward close to 40 years, my second business, Hardaway Marketing Services, was acquired by Intel. I didn't last in there more than a year. I hated it. And then I met Ed Nussbaum, who is running the Arizona Internet Professionals Association. And that's when Stelthmode Partners was formed. 2019 is the 20th anniversary of Stelthmode Partners. We have now coached and advised over 1,600 entrepreneurs all over the world. I know the good ones when I see them. In the local crop of current ones, I'll just call out Hamid Sojai and his wife Laudan, Heidi Janenga, PK Fields, Jenny and Odine, and Eli Chimouni. There are many, many more because now we are really a hub. But those are the ones that when I meet with them, they have this intensity that says, I am never giving up, no matter what. The man I'm introducing this morning is one of those entrepreneurs with special qualities. I met him at a cocktail networking thing, and I knew it immediately. Not only because he bought me a drink, not like everybody else. Then we had lunch a couple of days later at some weird-ass sushi place in Francine, and he wanted me to work with him. I already knew that I did, just like I always know very quickly when I don't. But he wouldn't contract with me until I spoke to a number of people in his life. His attorney, his previous investors, his former partner, and even his father. When I Googled him, I found out why, and I called everybody that he told me to call. They all said they'd work with him. And his father said he was an investor in his latest company. Robert is the founder of Internet America, which you guys probably won't remember because it was 1995 when the internet was new. DotSafe, and he was also a co-founder of LifeLock. And in the past, he'd also been the recipient of some interesting publicity, which, by the way, happens to most successful entrepreneurs at one time or another, Mark Zuckerberg. I read it all, and with 20 years of running a tech PR firm behind me, I knew how much to discount. I've now been working with him for 6 months on his latest company, and I admire and respect him more than any of you guys would ever know. To give the talk he's giving this morning takes incredible courage. And to do it while you're in the middle of building another potential unicorn takes even more. His latest company, SurchX, is in the process of revolutionizing credit card processing for small merchants. But mostly he wants to help other people like himself get over the stigma that comes with mental illness. You're gonna love this man. I mean, I love this man, so I'm programming you to love this man. Please welcome Robert Maynard, my latest hero.
Thank you, Francine. Your check is by the door. So, this is going to be kind of serious for some of you. I hope that it becomes uplifting for all of you. I've worked on it for most of my life, and I'm going to try really hard not to read it. So we'll see what we can do. Today, before I get started, I stand here before you as a recipient of an embarrassment of miracles. Without those in my life, I would be dead several times over. Today I'm going to tell you about some of that story. It's too long to tell you its entirety, but it's going to be the good, the bad, the ugly, and the hopeful. First, I want to walk through this code of conduct. This is how I run my businesses and my life. What I'd like you to do is I'm going to actually read it to you and give you some color around them, but I'd like you to think about these and reflect on them as I go through my story. So the first one, do what you should, not what you can, is very profound as a decision rule. As you inculcate that through your culture, people start realizing that your company's not about processes or policies. Your company is about people, either your customers, your vendors, your shareholders, and especially your teammates. So if you can get them to always make the decision, do what you should, not what you can, the policies become an outgrowth of that. So you end up building a kinder company. And kindness pays. We lead people and we manage systems. I'll just put it this way. If you, an employee who is managed goes home at 5 o'clock, a teammate who is led will break down steel doors. So let's just leave it at that. Be right here, right now. One of the ways that manifests is we don't allow I just want to call you out, Randy. We don't allow electronics in meetings. It makes the meetings much more productive. We don't have to talk about things the same times over and over. Meetings that would usually last an hour last 20 minutes. People feel respected. People feel engaged. And I mean, I don't know how many of you sat in a meeting with someone who's just constantly on their phone. It's just the rudest thing. I said no to a venture capitalist who did that to me. He wanted to give us $6 million, and he was a big guy. And it was like, I don't want you on my board. So no. And then finally, we're about what matters. And what matters is integrity. Relationships matter. Performance matters. I mean, if you're in a company, you have to perform at some point, or you're all going home. Family matters. So if you have a family issue at home, we want you taking care of it. Society, we believe, matters. And most importantly, each and every one of you matter. So I've literally come back from the dead 3 times, either through a shattered body or a shattered mind. I've been told I would never work again by teams of doctors twice. And that I should just go on disability and give it up. You can imagine what I said to that. And most of them could not tell me I was wrong. What was wrong. I've been bankrupt 3 times. I've been on welfare and Medicaid after taking a company public. I've been pilloried in the press and told by many that my career was over and could never come back. And I've attempted suicide twice. The companies I've created have created $7 billion in wealth from nothing. They've sold more than $4 billion of goods and services. They've created 3,000 jobs, and they have paid hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. So which am I? Am I an abject failure, or am I a successful entrepreneur? And the answer is both. And that keeps me humble. And if there's one thing that I would like you to take home today, is that humility is the most important trait in a successful life. It is hubris. I don't care who you are, athlete, businessman, garbage man, wife, husband, kid. It is hubris that is the original sin. In fact, it is the original sin in Genesis. So take that. My hubris almost killed me, and it should have, quite frankly. And while I'm a father, I've made lots and lost tons of money. While I've been married to 2 wonderful women, and I run a new startup, I also happen to be bipolar. And that, my friends, comes back to bite me in the ass on many occasions, or has, maybe not so much anymore. So I've been asked to talk about my bipolar journey, or at least part of it, so here it is. When I was 16 years old, I was having problems with unreasonable anger and rage. I was having constant racing thoughts of hurting myself or other people. And I told my dad, and he, I kid you not, said it's probably all those spy thrillers you read. I shit you not. Did I tell you he was a doctor? But I did go to a psychiatrist who did diagnose me as bipolar. He prescribed lithium. And after a month, when it was time to get refilled, my dad asked me, do you feel any different? Now, the whole point with lithium is that you don't feel any different, right? It stabilizes you so you don't go crazy. And I told him that. So he said there was no need to go back to the doctor or refill. Now, he's a doctor, right? But in his defense, and I don't generally defend my father, this was 40 years ago, and it was, and no one really got how very serious bipolar disorder is. But here are some facts. About 50% of the people who are diagnosed and treated for bipolar disorder die unnaturally. That imputed mortality is more than many cancers. 12% of the male population in prison is bipolar. Less than 1% of the American population is bipolar. Fully 50% of the homeless population is thought to be bipolar. So folks, this is an insidious, deadly, and tragic illness. It must be taken very, very seriously. Your life is at risk. Those who you love, your life is at risk. Their life is at risk. Now, one of the biggest symptoms I had was this constant racing thoughts of suicide and self-harm. I would see a knife on the counter, and I could visualize in my head plunging it into my neck. And I would feel a sense of relief when I did that. I knew where all the unprotected bridge abutments in the city were. You know, the ones that don't have the big yellow things in front of them. And then one day I nearly got crushed by a flatbed full of bricks. And instead of saying, wow, that was really close, I said, crap, I missed my chance. Now this, when I was driving my new Lexus from my lovely home with my soulmate as my wife, 2 beautiful children, driving to the public company I had founded. So you could call that abnormal behavior, right? But I didn't really attempt suicide until after my first wife and I split. I actually overdosed on lithium. And I spent about a week in intensive care while I decided if I needed a kidney transplant. And I didn't, thank God. And then I went, of course, straight to a locked ward for treatment. And initially I was diagnosed with major depression. I don't have a lot of manias, but man, when I do, watch out because they're big. But I had not had any real manias up till then. And I was treated for major depression, including electroshock therapy, what else? A raft of meds. Talk therapy, horse therapy, dog therapy, talking stick therapy, everything you can possibly imagine, I did. Unfortunately, the treatments for major depression are not the same as they are for bipolar depression, which is a totally different animal. The psychiatrist I met in the hospital is a brilliant woman. And although we were dealing with the wrong diagnosis, which by the way happens an average of 8 times before people are properly diagnosed as bipolar, she saved my life many times over. She was looking through my files and she said, "So, you're a Marine?" "Yeah, I'm a Marine." She said, "Let me ask you a question. Would you die for your children?" "In a heartbeat." "Would you kill for them?" "Of course." She said, "Well, let me tell you a few things about women whose fathers die early by their own hand." And then she brought me this whole raft of statistics of, sex, drugs, lives ruined, they were probably all made up, but it worked because she said, "So here's what you have to do, Marine. You have to suck it up and live for your kids." That was tough. That's when I ended up on welfare and all the rest of that stuff. In fact, I had to live out of my car for a week as I arranged somewhere else to live after I got evicted. I had to take a food box home from the clinic because I had no food. That, my friends, will make you humble. I spent 3 years trying to stabilize out of those episodes. I had to find the right doctor, and I went through many. I had to find the right meds, and just, quite frankly, simply exhaust myself every day trying to keep breathing. But I'm stubborn, and I would not quit on my daughters. So I sucked it up. I did whatever it took. I totally surrendered to my treatment team. I never missed a dose to the more than 20 meds that were prescribed to me in all kinds of different combinations and doses. But I constantly sought answers. I changed my lifestyle, and I was just too stubborn to quit. But it took an awfully long time, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Living was hard. As I said, I joined the Marines as a young man. I wanted to be one of the few. I wanted to be proud of myself. I had a giant streak of shame running through my core, which is a totally another story. And although I compensated for it with performance and achievement, it was my fundamental shame that drove me to the Marines. Maybe I thought they would finally beat my shame out of me, and I would respect myself. The Marines sold that, I bought it, and it didn't tank. I was not a terribly good athlete when I was in the Marines, or ever, frankly. And to be a really good Marine, you have to be an athlete. But I was smarter than most, and it got me a lot of attention, it got me promoted, so it was not horrible. I'm also too stubborn to quit. While I couldn't run a 6-minute mile, if my fellow Marines were running 6-minute miles, I was right there with them. I was just not going to quit. After the Marines, I left and went to college. I was determined that I would not go back to the military. But then something happened that most of you won't remember. A good friend of mine was murdered by terrorists and dropped like a sack of trash from an airplane in Algeria. I took my records, I took my grades, and I said, where do I sign? At the ROTC office. I spent virtually all my career in the Army's 12th Special Forces group, eventually landing as a team leader. There, as in the Marines, I was taught the fundamentals of leadership and then more advanced concepts. And what I learned is that to lead an elite unit, I had to earn it every single day. And I do that all the way till today. The core competency of the military's combat arms is leadership development. It is the ability to create and mentor small unit leaders. And without that core competence, a unit will die in combat. I don't care how straight they shoot. There were real consequences for us if I didn't do my job right, including death. If I didn't do it right, these men I thought of as my brothers would follow me straight to their deaths, and it would be my fault. So I learned how to be a leader. I learned how to make new leaders, and I use that knowledge now. It's my secret weapon. Remember, lead people, manage systems. So I believe that building a hypergrowth business is the closest thing there is to combat in the business world. Not that I love combat. Thus, while there are many core competencies required to make a startup go, to run a business, to recruit, to do all these things, the single most important core competence of a hypergrowth business is small unit leadership development. Because there is too much tribal knowledge. It takes too much time to put that knowledge into other people to replace someone who has it. They need to impart that information and continue to teach how to impart it. And without this core competence, the business will fail or will not grow fast enough to take advantage of the market opportunity. Now, I'm not really known for doing things slowly. And those of you who know me know that. I have large ideas and they change markets, and I execute. But when the company takes off, it's not my doing. It's those senior and junior leaders who have signed up for the mission, the ones who have trained each other, the ones who have bled together. They're the ones who make it work. My job is essentially hire people who are smarter than me, enable them to win, and then get the hell out of their way. The biggest mistake of a leader. A little bit of my entrepreneurial story. In 1995, I founded a company called Internet America. 3 years later, the company IPO'd on the first day of trading. It increased by 24%. We were one of the first internet service providers in the country, and uniquely to our competition, we were cash flow positive. But in 2000, the internet bubble burst, and in 2001, we were delisted from NASDAQ, and yet another humbling experience. The company sustained itself until 2014 when it was sold, but I was gone by then. You see, I sued my board of directors because they would not register the options to the people that we had promised, who had bled and worked for the company. Now, suing your board is not really good for your career path as a CEO. Eventually, we settled. It cost me millions of dollars, but my teammates who had earned it got what they had earned. Because integrity matters. And people matter. I took the money I had earned at Internet America and started a company called DotSafe. It was a filtering service for schools who wanted to keep bad content from their kids and wanted to keep an eye on what other people were doing. The schools didn't really grasp the size of the problem at the time, and they didn't have the funding to do it. So I was a couple years ahead of the time. The internet bubble burst. There was no money for investment. All my money went away, along with the internet bubble. And I lost all my money trying to do DotSafe. But let me tell you something. With our first installation, we caught 13 pedophiles in a school system in 2 weeks. They all went to jail for a very long time, and 11 of them were teachers. So I lost all my money, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. because society matters. I have to go back to it. And I keep going to the wrong page. Is it okay? I'm not like the world's best speaker. I have good stories. In hindsight, it's probably fair to say that the internet bubble, losing all my money over and over again, making a bunch, losing it, and then the stress of, just really triggered my illness. We still didn't know really what we were dealing with. Because when I get depressed, when people with bipolar depression get depressed, we have very severe pain, undifferentiated pain in our bodies, and there's no way to get away from it, which is why we get misdiagnosed so much. I've had my appendix taken out because I was in so much pain. The doctor comes back and says, "There's nothing wrong with your appendix." And I said, "Well, okay, because it still hurts." And I'd be physically ill. I would throw up, I would have fevers. It's impossible to diagnose. So now you can look at this one. Now, in my manic episodes, I was undependable. I gambled voraciously. I had no sense of right and wrong, no sense of cause and effect. Ultimately, it cost me my marriage. It separated me from my children when they needed me the most. It cost me my fortune. You see, I was a good and honest and honorable man 99.9% of the time. But 0.1% of the time, I was not. Now, bipolar disorder was a reason, but the reasons don't matter. It's that 0.1% of the time that started defining my life, who I was. Or who people thought I was. A manic episode landed me in jail. One day, 5 deputy sheriffs came to my door and said it was time to go. They had a warrant for my arrest. Apparently, I had taken a marker, and marker is a loan, from a casino in Las Vegas, and then I didn't repay it. I ended up scratching my money together to pay it off and pay the fine, and the charge was dropped. But that was not good. Now, when they came to my door, I was very confused because I was going through electroshock therapy when that episode happened, and one of the universal side effects is that your memory during those months of treatment is completely wiped out. So I had no real memory of doing it, and my identity had been stolen once before. And so I'm concluding as I go to jail that, man, somebody did this in my name, somebody stole my identity. I did spend 12 days in Sheriff Joe's famous jail, in the psych ward of all places. It was an interesting and difficult experience, but not as difficult as some other things I had done. To be clear, although my memory now is more like a dream and I've been convinced that I did it, I did take out the marker. Did I lie about the identity theft? Not at first, but then it was a really easy lie for me to believe. Was I rigorously honest? No. There were a couple of inconvenient facts that made it hard for me to believe even that my identity had been stolen. And when I read about it in the newspapers, I was convinced after the second one. Then I got to read about it. Well, I'll tell you in a minute. And to my detriment, I chose the easier version. In fact, this is the first time I publicly spoken and admitted that I was fundamentally dishonest in that story. I should never said that my identity was stolen, regardless of my memory loss. Now, when you're sitting in jail, you have a lot of time to think. And thinking that my identity had been stolen, I was like, man, there just has to have been a way that I would have known about this. There has to have been a way I could have stopped it in advance. Thus was born the concept of LifeLock. So maybe I had to go to jail for fun. Now, years later, having already been publicly shamed once for my own bad behavior when I was arrested, I find myself and my company embroiled in presidential politics, which is yet another story. And I found myself getting a very difficult lesson in the importance of humility and absolute honesty. It became national news, so it went from the New Times here in Phoenix to the New York Times and kind of everything in between. And the message was, presidential candidate endorses crook. Now it's crook is the president. Sorry. Now, what I decided to do was do what I should, the first few words that I put up on the board. I had to publicly fire myself from the company I had created. And I also knew I couldn't defend myself in the press or speak publicly about it, because it would have just made the story live. The company needed to be free of the smell of dishonesty, and I needed to pay for my own dishonesty and bad behavior. So I did the right thing, and I did it. It cost me $100 million. It cost me fame and a guaranteed entry in a 2-time IPO entrepreneur. But I do believe to this day it had to go down that way. And while I did not garner any public accolades, quite the reverse, actually, my reputation in investor circles was cemented. I'm known first and foremost as an earner, and making many people billions of dollars will do that for you. But much more importantly, I am known for doing the right thing at the right time, regardless of how much money is on the table, and regardless of whether or not it is personally going to adversely affect me. And that is why I receive the support, love, and encouragement of people who have invested with me before, or wish they had, who work for me, and who encourage me. And it's also why they and others want to invest and work with me again. And that, my friends, that is worth more than $100 million. I should just walk off now. I mean, I got the applause. Now I'm the founder of a new startup. And with another embarrassment of miracles, I have assembled the most capable team I have ever could possibly hope for. We're backed by millions of dollars of smart money. We're closing our first major institutional round this week. And together we will build a business that dwarfs anything I've ever done. We're changing the way that businesses are going to deal with their merchant processing fees. It's a $16 trillion market growing 11% a year. So SurchX is the culmination of my lessons. But this is not a talk about SurchX. If you're interested, go to searchx.com and figure it out. This is my story, which is a story of wins and losses, shame, vindication, love, leadership, hope, and miracles. It is also a presentation of the way I run my business, and I suppose I need to impart some wisdom here. So here's a list of my recommendations to you. It cost me hundreds of millions of dollars to build this list. You get it for an hour of your time on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. And I got the better part of that deal. You must have a dedication in your life and in your business to rigorous honesty. There is no time in a startup to deal with politics. There's no time to soften the blow. There is no time to not say exactly what you mean and communicate clearly. Whereas the more people you lead, the more you serve. Just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you're in charge. They have to give you permission to lead them. You have to have the moral authority to lead. And you have to earn that literally every single day. I mean, the people on my senior executive team are so much more accomplished than me. They have unbelievable resumes. Me telling them what to do is not going to work. And they won't follow me because they're leaders of their own. So I literally wake up every morning, I spend some quiet time, and I say, what do I have to do to earn my spot today? Something I learned in the service. Don't demand something you aren't willing to give. How many of you have seen a CEO that says you have to work until 10 tonight, and then he goes home at 4 and goes golfing? Have you seen that? Yeah, no moral authority. Generosity is a really good investment. Kindness is key to success. Give all the credit for everything that goes right and take all the blame for what goes wrong. Remember that entrepreneurship and startups is scary. Be courageous. Be around people who are courageous and who support you. Do not allow all those people in your family who say, why aren't you working at Citibank? Me. Don't spend time with them. And like real estate, humility, humility, humility. Finally, there is a greater purpose in life. And I have a greater purpose in life than making a bunch of people a bunch of money anymore. I am so grateful for my life. I am grateful for your time this morning and the opportunity to speak here. Every day is a new gift. And I know that there are no limits to what I can do with my life, and that I am here for a larger purpose than making a bunch of people a bunch of money. I'm no longer ashamed. That's a big statement. I'm healthy and I'm stable. But more importantly, I'm a living testimony that you can do anything you want. You have a larger purpose. Find out what that is and follow it. It's not just building a company. It's leave the world a little better than you found it. Imagine if 6 billion people did that. My personal email address is robert@maynard.com. It's my name. If you are struggling with mental illness, if someone you love is struggling with mental illness, write me, and I will help any way I can. Please don't send me pictures. I think it's back to you, Francine. You're not crying.
Hi, thank you for everything you've done. And did you ever go back and finish the software with pedophiles and everything, or did somebody continue that work?
No, it's been continued. There's plenty of...
Thank you.
Yeah.
My mom's a principal, so it's important.
Any others?
So, thank you for sharing all that. It's I usually tear up at business lectures. I really appreciate it. So I have a couple friends dealing with some of the issues that you've dealt with. What's your advice for me when they text at 2 o'clock in the morning or just at the bottom and are crying out for help? What can I do?
Okay. That's really kind of a perfect question. And it's a hard one to answer. Don't be a doctor, right? So imagine that you're in a business lecture like this, and we're talking about something, and a doctor says, Mark, come up here. What's your name? Jack, come up here. You don't have to. And what we do is we roll up their sleeve and we cut them both on the arm. Now, Jack puts a Band-Aid on it, starts, they both do the same thing, right? They cover it instinctively, their body bleeds and clings the wound. But then Jack starts knitting and puts his Band-Aid on and goes walking back. Now Mark, he's starting to bleed on the carpet. And we could say things to Mark like, what did your mother do to you that causes you not to want to stop bleeding? We could say, if you really wanted to stop bleeding, you could just make the decision. We could tell him, look, Jack did it, why can't you? What would you really do if you had someone standing here who couldn't stop bleeding? What would you really do?
Call for help.
You would call for help, or you would just take them to the hospital, right? If someone calls you in crisis, they're talking about hurting themselves, they're talking crazy, they're talking, if you're talking to someone, especially if they're in a mania. And if somebody calls you and says, I've got a gun in my hand, talk me down. Say, hang on 1 minute. Put them on hold, call 911. There is nothing else to do. This person is bleeding on the carpet, and it is only with urgent and critical, acute medical care that person is going to live. So don't try to be a doctor. Go sit with them, especially if they're talking about suicide. Just say, I'm coming over, or you come over, or let me come get you, whatever. And just sit quietly with them. Take them to the hospital. They'll bitch and moan about it when there's a going, especially if they're manic. I don't need to go to the hospital. Well, we're going anyway, so, jump out if you want, and then keep the doors locked. Okay?
All right, everybody, thank you very much for coming and listening to this. Oh,
Yep.
Ask quick.
go ahead.
If I can sum up your excellent talk in about 10 seconds, it seems like you're saying the key to success is confidence plus character. Am I right? And could you expand on that, please?
Well, as I said, I think, the question was, is the key to success in life competence and character? I think the key to success in life is humility. Because if you are humble, you will learn enough to be competent. If you are humble, you will have the character you need to survive and succeed. So to me, the foundational root issue is humility. Thank you for the question.
What an honor. Thank you so much. Enjoy the day.